right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still dissecting the Supreme Court BBI ruling on the issues that have come up. One of them is the basic structure doctrine. We've already dealt with that. We've also spoken about President cannot initiate constitutional changes through popular initiative, hence BBI bill was unconstitutional. We're still trying to reach Honorable Gladys Boss, Women Rep Wasingishu. We seem to be having a technical challenge with that. As soon as we get through to her, we'll have her in studio also to speak to us on this issue. But Honorable Peter Opondo Kaluma is here with us, Member of Parliament, Homa Bay Town, and Professor Tom Ojienda, Senior Counsel, also Senator Kisumu aspirant, who was also here with us. We were still talking about, we're talking about this issue of the President enjoying immunity from prosecution. This has been decided by the Supreme Court. But we see here ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi saying now that the BBI bill is null and void, those responsible for it must be held to account for the resources that they put in that, calling it criminal exercise. And also the Deputy President has been categorical, saying that now the Handshake brothers must come out and apologize for dragging Kenyans through a process that was null and void.
I think on the contrary, Trevor, I think both the Deputy President and Musalia Mudavadi, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, perhaps have not been advised. I think they need counsel, they need advocates who listen to the judgment, who understand constitutional law, to explain to them the real meaning of the judgment of the Supreme Court. Number one, the President has been absolved from any wrongdoing by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is emphatic that under Article 143 of the Constitution, a sitting president cannot be subjected to civil processes and any other process. You cannot purport to subject the president to questions of infraction of procedures, processes, and law while he serves in office. And I think the court is unanimous on that question. And I think that that is important because the president was acting in good faith and in the interest of the Republic. Remember, even on the question of whether or not the president can bring a bill to amend the Constitution as a citizen under Article 257, Njoki Ndung'u judge dissented. And in her analysis, if you look at her judgment, she referred to Article 1 on the people and Article 255, clearly setting out, and in a well-reasoned out judgment, I read Njoki's judgment too, that Chapter 16 does not exclude the president, though he's assenting from participating in the process of initiating the amendment. Yeah. So I think clearly that either way the president is safe. He was acting in the public interest as the first citizen of the Republic. He's also a citizen, like any other person. Remember also that the alter ego of the president and the prime minister, Right Honorable Baba, were part of the process. And that is why the court said that there were other faces that were part of this process, not just the president himself. There were other actors. And then the court then also finding that, of course, except for a dissent from Judge Wanjala and Judge Mwilu and Judge Ibrahim on public participation, that the processes, the bill and the processes provided for sufficient public participation from members of the public. One, of course, except for the second schedule that was problematic because it came at a point later at the tail end. I therefore would say that Honorable Musalia Mudavadi has missed the proper analysis by miles. There's no culpability in this process. This is a process that is for reinvention. It is a process that will be sanitized once re-engineered by the next parliament. The only thing you could say, Trevor, is that these amendments will not, the process could not start before the election. That's the only win that you can talk about, that we cannot, it would be, because of the election period, it would be impossible to get members of parliament to debate a bill now that they're out there campaigning and we're approaching an election. Otherwise, this is a process that should be recommenced as soon as possible so that reggae is back on its feet. I think the players are out there already waiting to commence, because we are looking at the good of the public. And as the judges observed, if so many people wanted these amendments, because it's the people speaking, Article 1, we the people are the sovereign.
Yeah.
And if the people desire to amend their constitution, and the clause on an amendability has now been removed, why not?
Yeah.
The BBI will be back on its feet, certainly.
Okay. Honorable Kaluma, what do you make of Mudavadi's demands, now saying that now that the BBI is null and void, those responsible for it must be held accountable for the resources that were put in that, what is called a criminal exercise, and the DP William Ruto demanding for an apology from the Handshake brothers?
You know, Mudavadi is a land economist. I would advise that he gets good lawyers and he takes politics out of his mind, because I see Mudavadi to be playing politics with something he has not understood.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that even as a land economist, I know Mudavadi knows that this decision by the Supreme Court opens the door very wide for amendments. And I also know he knows, you know, away from politics, that of course, you know, the fact of the matter is that even if, you know, these fetters to the constitutional amendment initiative by BBI were removed, it could not be done before elections, because it would be like we are over-engaging Kenyans onto, you know, electoral, you know, processes, because referendum is also the making of a choice by the people on how, you know, they want to be governed under the Constitution. Yes, so the fact of the matter is that there isn't, in my view, even delay. Because even as proponents of BBI, we were already clear in our mind, if you've been studying what Baba has been saying, what the president has been saying, even in the last communication by the president on the matter I was watching on Citizen, that the spirit of those provisions will always live. Look, Trevor, we were looking at how to increase the amount of resources going down from the national, you know, level downwards, from the bare minimum of 15% to 35%. And you've had Mudavadi having turned around. You remember, Trevor, by the way, Mudavadi was a proponent of BBI. So I don't know why you're forgetting that. And at the signing of the process, you saw the president, you saw Raila Odinga, you saw Mudavadi follow. Number 3, you saw Kalonzo Musyoka. Even by that alone, Kenyans, you see Mudavadi has changed sides. And he's essentially saying everybody unknown to him, including himself, should be held to account. But is there still need, in as much as Mudavadi and Ruto are now telling you, Trevor, that this thing is dead and should be let to die, isn't there still need to increase the amount going down? Remember, I've been in Parliament for 2 terms now. There is a reason as to why you set the minimum. And Ojienda joining the Senate will soon realize it. The national government will never release more than what a law obligates. You can tell our people that the CDF, the Constituency Development Fund, which we use to transform schools, for instance, has been put at 2.5 of the national budget. We've never gotten a coin beyond 2.5%. So this phantom, you see Mudavadi and the deputy president now telling people, oh, if the president wants, he can increase. Why have they not increased and is part of the presidency all these years? So still there is need for that. There is need, Ojienda will tell you, to entrench the Constituency Development Fund in the Constitution as was proposed by BBI. And you just need to look at the number of court challenges to CDF which have been in court because it is not in the Constitution to realize it should be so. It should be entrenched in the Constitution, and we should have it. There is need to move money from the counties up to the ward level. That way, that small business person who is doing small roads can also have a way, because they cannot compete for these expressways and the national roads up here going for billions. Now, that need is still there. There is still need to see how to reorganize, you know, the government, more so at the top. And you remember, Trevor, there is a time I was telling you that there is nothing more difficult to serve as a member of parliament, either in the Senate or National Assembly representing the people, when you have the entire executive, outside there. You remember before this current constitution came into force in 2013, having been enacted in 2010.
Yeah.
What we called in parliament question time was the most active time. Because an MP would stand as a representative of the people and ask, Professor Ojienda, as minister for this, tell me what is happening to my people. And remember, the speaker would say, commit. And then a minister says, we are solving the issue in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks, the minister has nowhere to hide. You don't even need to ask a question. You just wait for him to enter and you tell the speaker he has entered here. He undertook to parliament to do this. It has not been done. And you saw things happening instantly. Ojode from my place used to say, this is Sirkal, bwana. Whatever we have said, must happen. Now we have a situation which Kenyans may not know. But no minister is coming to parliament to answer questions of concern to the people down there. If you have a system where the ministers are in parliament, Kenyans need to know it is also cheap. Look, because when a member of parliament is also the minister, the only thing he earns is some extra responsibility allowance. Otherwise, his earning as MP is what is taken in there. Now, we have a situation where we are paying all members of parliament at those rates Kenyans have been crying about, and then you have a chain of people you call cabinet secretaries and chief administrative secretaries. You see them with vehicles shoving people, a minimum of 3 around them, extra vehicles and facilities. And Kenyans don't know they are earning, including those, chief administrative secretaries, beyond MPs. This is in a country where we are saying the wage bill is taking so much that would rather go to development. So it is cheap.
Yeah.
It is more accountable. I can tell you, if it were not that Kimunya was in parliament then, Alwale would have not gotten him out. But remember, because Kimunya is there, he's being shamed live. People are watching. Alwale is saying Kimunya must go.
Yeah.
And of course, Kimunya has to go. You shame him in public, you confirm he's not. And because they were there and they are being watched live, you saw even the kind of responses which were coming, to the people in parliament were well researched, well investigated. Today, you want to meet a minister, you are in some committee there. Questions are dying unattended to. So on the whole, without going into the provisions, I can say there is so much this decision has opened the way to. So that it may not be even beyond just what was already provided in BBI. Even in terms of the 70 constituencies, not all is lost. The Supreme Court is saying you cannot amend the substantive provisions of Article 89, which empowers IEBC to delimit, and which has prescriptions on how you determine the number of electoral units. By a schedule you call second schedule. If you want to change it, go to Article 89. So that even at the level of BBI team, if they are still keen on doing what they wanted to do and upgrading the idea of population beyond other, considerations, you simply go to Article 89 and you say population will be weighted more than, the other, considerations, and you have it there. So it is a big opening. I would ask Musalia Mudavadi, in as much as we are playing politics, not to, celebrate things for the sake of it. Read the judgments, and they are very voluminous, written by each. I spent the whole night. You can see I'm a bit sleepy reading them. And you cannot be, you cannot avoid being, happy at any decision, even where they disagreed. You just say, we have really a mature court which can resolve this issue. So Musalia is playing politics. Ruto, of course, is playing politics. Let us focus with them on politics. BBI, in the manner the Supreme Court has said, is on half break. We are going to work very hard for the proponents of BBI, led by, Raila Odinga, to take over the reins of power. And I would myself be pressing, because I know I'll be re-elected, that, in his first 100 days, we spruce up, this document. We make additions which can be made. We exclude those matters the court have raised a red flag on. And of course, we move the process forward.
All right. We'll bring back your feedback in just a bit. Prof, I'm coming to you shortly. We're going to bring up your feedback in just a Tabitha Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use their hashtag DayBreak. Also, we are still trying to reach Honorable Gladys Boss Sholei. There seems to be a bit of a technical issue there. We apologize for that. Also, we're still trying to reach Elias Mutuma as well, who is an advocate. Still technical issues we're dealing with there, but as soon as we have them, we'll drop them into the discussion. Prof, you want something to add on this?
I just want to confirm, of course, I know that he has just whispered to me that I have the ticket, so I will also be... I think I will implement some of the formula for sharing of resources from Senate to the people in my county, 042. But let me just mention this, and Mr. Kaluma is emphatic on this point, that you cannot celebrate a loss for the people. The proposal to increase money from the 15% devolved funds to the 47 counties to 35% is a gain for every person, irrespective of choice of politics. The two divides, or three or four, whatever you call them, stand to benefit from these amendments.
Yeah.
As Honorable Kaluma has also mentioned, and let me also emphasize, that the choice for the presidency to have a cabinet within or outside Parliament must be given, because members of cabinet sitting in Parliament are not only responsive, but are easy to deal with. And there's no contradiction in allowing the president to designate ministers from amongst members of Parliament. These are gains that BBI had. These are things we should not be celebrating about. These are things that we need to get back on their feet as fast as possible. And that is why, now that the route has been cleared, this bill should be the first business of the next government. So that in a Raila Odinga presidency, the BBI should be brought back and all these gains fast-tracked for the benefit of the people of Kenya. Let me comment on the finding on IBC. I wanted to comment on this one.
Yeah.
Now, the question of quorum of the IBC and the affirmative finding of the 6 judges, Justice Mohammed Ibrahim dissenting, is that IBC had a quorum to undertake its affairs in line with Article 251 of the Constitution, which must be interpreted to override Schedule 5 of the IBC Act, which sets the quorum at 5.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the court, as I said, relied on the Isaiah Biwott case, which was basically a case that touched on an election and whether the Chebukati team of 3 commissioners were competent to run the elections.
Yeah.
The Constitutional Court finding then, and I argued the case that I told you, that the IBC was properly constituted. Imagine, Trevor, if the court had found otherwise, as the Court of Appeal and the High Court had found.
Yeah.
It would mean that all those actions by Chebukati and team, when there were 3 commissioners, would have been rendered null and void, and Chebukati and his team would be subjected, would have been open to prosecution, because that would be a nullity and surcharge, surcharge prosecution. And I don't know what the fate of the MPs who were elected then would be. It means that they would have been elected, would have been in office unconstitutionally. They would have been asked to refund all that they earned.
Yeah.
It would have been a terrible finding by the court. So I am happy that the Supreme Court has found this reverse finding, in my view, is one of the biggest gains in this appeal.
Okay.
Because then all those procurements that relate to this election would have been nullified.
Okay.
We would be having a flurry of cases for all those who are paid monies from the IBC during the time that Chebukati, Professor Gulea, and the 3rd commissioner were in office. Okay. So this has been this is a gain for me. Okay. And I think that then, of course, there's that last question that we have not interrogated. the question as to whether we can have one question or multiple questions.
Yeah, in fact, that's what I was coming to.
Yes, I think that's
important.
Yeah, that's a very important.
Okay, let's come to it in just a bit. But let me bring in Elias Mutuma, an advocate of the High Court. He's joining us on phone here. Elias, the team in studio, the panelists in studio seem to believe that BBI is not dead. What is your interpretation of the ruling by the Supreme Court judges?
Thank you so much, Trevor, for the opportunity. I would like to confirm that indeed BBI is dead as we know it. BBI as a means to amend the Constitution is dead. BBI as a handshake, as a means of bringing about peace, that still exists. But then you cannot fall back on the BBI having the courts, the High Court, the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court indicted the process, then you want to fall back and say BBI is not dead. I do not see how that process will be revived. Unless we begin a whole process of amending the Constitution from scratches, right from formulating the bill, right from public participation, and that must be done by Wanjiku himself. If there is any state involvement, and the court has confirmed that, that process cannot survive by way of a popular initiative. So even with the Raila presidency or the William Ruto presidency, none of them can be seen to push for amendment of the Constitution, because that would still befall the same fate that the BBI process has befallen. Number two, of course, the BBI process as a means to amend the Constitution was a means to capture power, was a means to accommodate political players into an arrangement that will see them share power. I do not see William Ruto having captured power on his own, wanting to amend the Constitution to share power. I do not see Raila being the president and wanting to amend the Constitution to share power. There would be no motivation. That motivation was only available to them before they captured power as a means to capture power. My views is that BBI as a means of amending the Constitution is dead. There is no way of reviving that. Thank you, Trevor.
Mutuma, one of the arguments that came through from the Supreme Court is that the president cannot initiate popular initiative amendment to the Constitution. But after the swearing in of the new president after 9th of August, he then becomes an ordinary citizen. Can he then revive this as an ordinary citizen?
Trevor, like I have said, it's a process that he has to begin afresh. Fresh in the sense that we must go back to the people and start collecting views, number one, on whether they want to amend the Constitution. What is it that they want amended in the Constitution? We will have a rigorous public participation. And the question would be, what would motivate then Uhuru Kenyatta to start amending the Constitution as a private citizen? And the second question is, if we amend that Constitution in September 2022, are we going to apply that amendment retrospectively to apply to a government that has already been formed? The answer is no. So even if we were to amend after August 2022, it means that the application of the amendments can only happen after the next general election. So I do not think that there would be any motivation. I do not think that it would help any political player if they amended the Constitution after the election. It will only help them come 2027, not 2022.
Okay. So, Mutuma, for you, what was the biggest win? Because I know you had challenged the process of it all, but the biggest win seems to come from the initiator of that process rather than the whole process, because there seems to be, the Supreme Court said that the public participation was there. It's just that the person who initiated it is where the rubber sort of met the road.
In my petition 400 of 2020, that is the Third Way Alliance petition, we had not challenged the content of the amendment bill. What we had challenged is the process and the people who are involved in proposing the amendments. To us, we got 100% win in the High Court because they said that this is a process that was initiated by the wrong people, being state actors. That is the same thing that was confirmed by the Court of Appeal. It is the same thing that was confirmed by the Supreme Court, that indeed an amendment to the Constitution by way of a popular initiative cannot be initiated by state actors or the executive. So to us, that was the biggest win. But let me also quickly add that the BBI process was ailing from a myriad of challenges, defects, and diseases. It only succumbed to one. It doesn't mean that the other defects are not there. You will, and I want to say this on national TV, that judgments are opinions of judges. So far we have 5 judges of the High Court, we have 6 judges of the Court of Appeal, and we have 5 judges of the Supreme Court who have made certain opinions in respect to the BBI. They cannot all be wrong. So I do not just think that the BBI's problem was the popular initiative and who initiated it, but there were other challenges and other diseases ailing it, as opined by the judges of the High Court and the judges of the Court of Appeal. It doesn't away the fact that we are looking at legal scholars, we are looking at experienced judges who really interrogated this issue and found out that there was a serious issue with the manner in which this amendment to the Constitution was initiated.
Okay. All right, stay with me on phone. Let me bring in Kaluma on this. Yes.
Yeah, Trevor, Mutuma has a very narrow view of this determination, to the extent that, Council is only seeing BBI as having been about sharing of power. The BBI document, as I was explaining before Council, was dealing with very many issues which, are far, far more beneficial to Kenya than even reorganizing the executive, which is the thing you keep, shouting. But even that reorganizing the executive has not been prohibited. Let me agree with him that there were multiple challenges to the, BBI constitutional amendment initiative. And these challenges were mounted in the High Court. Those challenges went to the Court of Appeal. Those challenges reached the Supreme Court. And the BBI constitutional amendment initiative has been stalled as unconstitutional only on 2 fronts. One, the involvement of the president, which speaks to the process. And also the idea that the second schedule was being proposed to delimit constituencies without amending Article 89. Now, if you look at those contestations, they are on process, Mutuma, not, the substance. And I don't know which other ground for challenge to this initiative could be, imagined. There is a writer called Shakespeare who says, a rose by any other name will still smell as sweet. What we are telling Mutuma is going into the next election, Raila wins, and BBI will come back as BBI or as Mutuma, but it will still smell sweet for those good things we intended to give Kenyans through BBI. And let me tell Mutuma that sometimes we may be celebrating winning on processes without looking at the whole thing. Professor Gienda has spoken to the matter of the quorum of IEBC. Trevor, I sit in the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee in the National Assembly. I think I'm the oldest member of that committee, doing nearly over 9 years now. As we approach the elections, preparations are made before. And remember what the Supreme Court has been lamenting about in the 2 presidential petitions. You remember what Kriegler and other people, talked about when we had post-election violence following the 2007 elections. That we need to, begin preparation in earnest. Mutuma may not know, but by the time of appointing the 4 additional commissioners, the 3 commissioners acting with Chebukati had procured ballot papers, had procured the electronic systems, had procured the facilities we need for free and fair elections. When you say that this judgment is not a win for Kenya, are you saying, or are you imagining what would happen if we collapsed that process and the Supreme Court agreed with the Court of Appeal and the High Court the way Mutuma and others wanted, that IEBC lacked quorum? Do you know what it would have meant? That everybody who has been awarded procurement would be facing some action before the review board. And you don't argue much. You say the commission was not properly constituted. Automatically, all these things are collapsed.
Legal.
We have barely some 4.5 months to elections. Do you have the time to go through those international bidding? We should be now procuring, and I think IEBC has also done it, the people to audit the register.
Okay.
If you collapsed all that, does Mutuma and the people on his side see the chaos we were going to take the country through? Okay. So this is a big win for Kenya. Ojenda has mentioned to you that there have been by-elections involving members of parliament. Do you remember the number of MPs there have been? Just imagine the number of MPs we have lost through COVID, unheard of in one term of parliament. Remember the others who faced, legitimate petitions and elections were nullified. Remember, this is going to MCAs. If the Supreme Court was not approached by the BBI team, and they, ruled that, the quorum was proper to do all those elections, do you know what it means in law to say null and void? Everything IEBC did or conducted in terms of by-elections collapse. It means all those leaders who have been sitting, anything they engaged on, including the laws they took to either county assemblies or parliament, would collapse. So the fact of the matter is that the judgment opens the way far wide. Far wide. I'm one person who was saying that there are some things we needed to have included. The judges themselves, through the election committee, have been telling us in terms of, firming up the processes of forming our government, there are some, gaps we have around, which we need to put. And indeed, if you want to see how sweet a thing is, eat it.
It's
in the pudding.
Okay.
We have tested the constitution. We are moving forward. There is indeed need to amend it. And I can tell Mutuma that Raila coming in as president, there will be not just those provisions in the BBI, but additional ones, including even the relationship between a deputy president and president, which I think Kenyans ought to consider. Okay,
Mutuma, I'll come to you for a response in just a bit, but Prof, I know you have to leave because you have an urgent matter coming through, so I'll give you a chance for making reactions, closing remarks, and also talk about the issue of the multiple questions that you raised earlier.
Thank you, Trevor. I think just to respond to Mutuma in a few minutes, I think Mutuma saw BBI as a momentary constitutional concern. And I think that is why he focuses on the BBI, and in his view, BBI has died because it cannot be completed during this tenure of parliament. Which is interesting, because at the same time, he then pontificates. He then says that BBI will come after the election. So he's also a convert. He acknowledges that the Supreme Court judgment is indeed a win for Kenyans. He acknowledges that the basic structured doctrine has been demolished by the Supreme Court. He also acknowledges that BBI can be commenced through another bill that will be brought to Parliament after the election in August. Of course, what is he saying? That BBI has not died. Reggae has not stopped. This is a pause so that we go back to the back room, reinvent the bill, and bring it back stronger. And as my learned friend, as Mheshimiwa, my colleague in the next parliament has said, an amendment, including an amendment to Article 89, is feasible, where you include an amendment that would include the process of increasing constituencies through a process other than through the set structure contained in Article 89. Okay. And that is what will happen. That is a feasible process. So, but he also gets it wrong by a wide margin when he says that the initiation must follow the 4 steps. The Supreme Court has said that you do not need the 4 steps when you are amending the Constitution. You only need the 4 steps that Mheshimiwa Kaluma referred to when you are creating or enacting a new Constitution. So I think largely, Mutuma then acknowledges again that their petition was not about the substance. So petitions number 11 and 13, the Supreme Court petitions, did not touch on the substance or the contents of BBI. So they had no problem with content.
It was the process.
And I think Mheshimiwa Kaluma and myself have emphasized that BBI had massive gains for Kenyans, massive gains for both sides of the political divide, because every person, including Musalia Mudavadi and His Excellency Deputy President William Ruto, would want more money to go to the 47 counties.
Okay.
Because that is what is portended by devolution.
Okay. Prof, I'll allow you to head out for your function that's coming through. That's Professor Tom Ojienda, Senior Counsel and Senator Aspirant for Kisumu. But we're still with the Mutuma on phone. Mutuma, what is your reaction to what my panelists have just said?
Thank you very much, Trevor. Honestly, I think the proponents of BBI want to put up a brave face in the wake of this judgment. And to reiterate, we had no problem with the contents of the BBI. We had no problem with amending the Constitution, because we appreciate that the Constitution is our document. It is our charter. We have a right to amend it at any time when we feel like we should. But then the question is, who should initiate the process of amending the Constitution under Article 257? What is it that we can amend? What is the procedure? And let me pause and tell Kenyans this. I do not think that any other person who seeks to amend the Constitution will just have a field day, because I think these petitions, the fact that they were highlighted throughout the media, from the High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, it has aroused a certain curiosity in Kenyans. They have understood exactly what a constitution is. They have understood the implication of amending the Constitution. They have understood their role when it comes to matters of amending the Constitution. So even with the Raila presidency, even with the Ruto presidency, I think that people will now demand to take a center stage role when it comes to matters amending the Constitution. It will not be a Raila affair, it will not be a Ruto affair, it will not be a Uhuru affair, it will not be a BBI affair. Kenyans will rise up and demand to be involved, and will only amend the Constitution if they feel that it is important to amend the Constitution, and that whatever they are amending suits their interest. Trevor.
Okay. Kaluma?
Yeah, Trevor, you know, Mutuma is not telling us what would have been the case had the BBI proponents and IEBC not approached the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And he's not doing that deliberately, because as a lawyer, I can read through his mind. If he were to do so, he would only come to one conclusion, that looking at the judgment and the clarity it now brings to the constitutional amendment process, which is the only challenge, this thing opens the pathway very wide. Mutuma, when you hear the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga pursue anything, read his history. He never does that for temporal reasons. As something like devolution, you know its history and Raila's involvement. And when he tells you that there is need for more money to go down, we mean there should be more money going down. When he tells you we need to consider how we can farm up the marginalized areas by a constitutional formula, as we also provide more constituencies to areas like, you know, Mount Kenya, which have so many people. More so when you are going to devolve, you know, money also through CDF, constitutionally through CDF. You know it. Trevor, I can give, you know, my brother Mutuma an example. As we speak now, pupils have done very well in exams. Do you know we have constituencies which can educate students, even in universities in the United States of America, because there are very few students to deal with in terms of their population. And yet, in places like Mount Kenya here, you have a number of students who can barely get even 2,000 in CDF. When you have Mutuma, BBI is saying increase constituencies and weight population as you also consider other things. You're doing a lot. If you go to a constituency in Kiambu here, just across here called Kiamba, the population of their registered voters is beyond my total population in Homa Bay Town constituency, including the children born today. How do you say it is fair for them as Kenyans when you are saying, as the Deputy President Mutuma has been saying, that he'll also be, implementing his cash transfer to implement this nebulous thing he calls bottom-up through the constituencies? How would it benefit the people of, Kiambaa constituency if you give them equal money as Garissa Town, Mandera North, and you tell them, we are one Kenya, we are moving forward. So there is so much that will be pursued. And Mutuma, I'm telling you, my prayer and what I'm going to do, even as I leave the station, is to, engage Kenyans, explain this thing to them, tell them the opportunities the Supreme Court has opened, and how, therefore, they should, elect Raila to implement these things which are good for the nation. I can assure you, we were not into this for purposes of power. We are into this for bigger things than what imagine is power. But even at the level of power, I'd mentioned, Trevor, that when you are talking about expanding the executive, I mean, it just adds some 3 people. And those 3 people are members of parliament. Anyway, we are in a situation, Mutuma, imagine the worst case scenario, and the destined scenario, by the way. The Deputy President Ruto becomes, loses elections, which is the highest probability. You then have that strong leader with all that mind, all those things he's talking about, the knowledge of government, just shouting from outside there. BBI was saying, if Ruto loses, let him continue to participate in government as the official leader of opposition, seated there telling us, Kaluma, I know better, was Deputy President. You know what I mean? You lose all that. So Mutuma, don't look at them temporarily. I believe if this constitutional amendment is enacted in the first 100 days of the Raila presidency, which we are working hard to achieve, it will go into implementation immediately, because any law sets the enforcement date. Once promulgated, we move forward. So it's good for the country. Let us look at them beyond politics. I'm sad, and I'm being reminded on the Twitter, Trevor, you are talking about, Musalia Mudavadi saying people should be held to account. I mean, just look at that tweet. This is the photo of Musalia signing immediately after Raila and Uhuru. And this is why I'm telling Kenyans, sometimes we should separate politics from what is good for us, and we look at issues as issues, not the personalities behind them. But the path has been cleared wide. Let us move forward to the elections, and let us have a regime which can implement these good ideals we are seeking through BBI.
Mutuma, there are some aspects of this ruling. Go ahead.
Trevor, number one, my learned friend, Mr. Kaluma, keeps on talking about that Raila will still amend the constitution if he becomes president. But I think he does not appreciate the judgment of the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, and the High Court that says that the executive's hand cannot be seen in a process of amending the constitution by way of appropriate initiative. So I keep on wondering then how a Raila presidency will amend the constitution when the Supreme Court has stated clearly that the executive has no mandate to amend the constitution. That is one. Number two, my learned friend, Mr. Kaluma, knows very well that we do not need to amend the constitution to increase the allocation of funds to county levels. The words used in the constitution are that we get a minimum of 15% minimum. We do not need to amend that. The only thing that needs to be done is making of a policy that increases from the minimum to another minimum of 30, 40, or even 50%. The Constitution allows and has left that field of increasing the revenue allocation to counties without necessarily amending the Constitution. In my view, and like it was stated by the Court of Appeal, is that we had some policy issues that had been, put as sweeteners, just dangling a carrot so that the voter will be enticed to vote for the amendment of the Constitution, while the real intent of amending the Constitution was sharing of power. So we do not need to amend the Constitution to achieve the gains of devolution. On the allocation of constituency, surely, all through, right from the High Court, Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court, including Justice Joaquin Dongo, who, to a larger extent, endorsed the BBI process still found fault with the amendment of Article 89 of dishing out constituencies without reverting to the formula that actually there is a scientific formula under the Constitution of how we should increase constituencies. So I think that should be appreciated very well. Lastly, on the issue of IBC, whether it was called it or not, I think the wider discussion and the wider issue ought to be, why did the IBC not have quorum? I mean, the 3 or 4 commissioners resigned just a few months after the 2017 election. Who was the duty bearer? Who was supposed to ensure that we have a fully constituted IBC? It is the executive, the president. The IBC Act, the Elections Act, provides that once these positions fall vacant, then the president will declare the position as vacant and initiate the process of filling those positions. Why is it that the executive did not see it fit to rise to the occasion to ensure that we have a fully constituted IBC, but later come to argue in court that, whatever IBC might have done, even when they were not fully constituted, should be deemed to be legal? I think it's trying to have your cake and eat it at the same time, and fault must be placed where it belongs to the executive of not filling in the position of IBC in time, then trying to use that to their advantage. Thank you, Trevor.
Okay.
Trevor, just a minute only.
Yeah.
Mutuma, the IBC is constituted through something called the selection panel under the 5th schedule to the IBC Act. And if you remember, just preceding the last elections, it was said that panel, once constituting the commission, collapses. So there was need for a new law upon which the executive were to act, and legislative process, is a process which you said involves a lot of public participation. So don't blame the president for the delay in appointing the new commissioners. There was no selection panel to do the preceding work before the appointment. On increase, Mutuma, it appears you joined late when I'd spoken to it, but I'd explained that no national government would give you more than the set minimum by law. And I gave the example of CDF, which is 2.5. We've never gotten as constituencies more than 2.5 of the national allocation, despite budgeting being within parliament. So I'm saying if you want to progress these things, let us move them forward that way. But on constituencies, if I were to tell you, what the court said is that you cannot amend Article 89 using the 2nd schedule. And as a lawyer, you cannot. What the Constitution or the Supreme Court now opens the path for is that you need to weight population, if it is the criterion you wanted to use to give some areas more constituencies, more than the other considerations like land size. And you do so by effecting an amendment to Article 9 of the Constitution, which will be, lawful. Lastly, don't say, a Raila presidency, cannot amend. What the court said is that as president, he cannot initiate. And you remember the footprints of our current president was found by the fact that he gazetted the secretariat and others. So what we need to avoid is gazettement of the secretariat by the president, but having the people, those 4 million people who signed, still move it. That is why I'm telling you, this judgment to me is beneficial, because this is the first time an amendment to the Constitution by popular initiative reached the level it reached. The process is now clear what needs to be done. And I can tell you, if things are good for Kenyans, I would ask even the proponents of BBI, including myself, not to let them die simply because we are approaching elections, but to, consider the determination of the Supreme Court as a pause and look at not only those good provisions, but also other provisions which could have been left out, even as we also look at those provisions which had contestations in a more consultative way. And if indeed they are going not to be beneficial to the country, we do away with them. And we have a package which moves the nation in the vision President Kenyatta Raila Amolo Odinga had when they initiated the handshake and asked Kenyans, to move forward in helping them. I thank you, Trevor.
All right, Mutuma, I think we're running out of time, but I'll give you a chance for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Trevor. I think what my learned friend again is failing to appreciate is the fact that the popular initiative and who has initiated the process is not just by the people who gazette the bill. When you look at the findings of the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court, they say that the conceiver of the idea of amending the Constitution is what matters. Who is it that has conceived the idea to amend the Constitution? So if it is even remotely found that the executive's hand, the executive's footprints are in the idea of amending the Constitution, then that process will be deemed as an executive initiative as opposed to a popular initiative. So my final remark is that I think this obsession with amending the Constitution must end. If it must come to be, then let it be initiated by the people themselves. Let it come from Wanjiko without any involvement of the executive. Thank you, Trevor.
All right, Kaluma, closing remarks.
Yeah, to the people of Kenya, the Supreme Court has spoken well in a very sober way, overriding various decisions which stood on the way of our thinking through the leadership, system we want. Countries grow, our society grows. We continue to test our current constitution. If there are those lapses, the Supreme Court has opened the path very wide for us to talk as Kenyans and see how we can, better our governance structures and systems by way of constitutional amendments in future. I thank you, Trevor.
All right. We have to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in and also for the feedback that you sent through. Honorable Gladys Boss, Woman Rep Wasingishu, couldn't make it. We had technical challenges with her. Honorable Peter Opondo Kaluma, Member of Parliament, Homa Bay Town, is with us here. Professor Tomo Jianda, Senior Counsel earlier on, and also Senator Aspirant for Kisumu, was here. He had to leave for an earlier function. Oliver Kipchumba, an advocate of the High Court, couldn't join us as well. And Elias Mutuma, advocate, speaking to us on phone. Thank you so much for all the deliberations on this. This is where we take a quick break. When you come back, Roy T. Boy and Shutter Boy on the decks. It's Friday, leveling up, people. See you in a bit and enjoy your weekend, by the way. Bye for now.